Welcome into Basketball by Association. My name is Basketball. That's Association there. Hello, Association. You know, the last time we spoke, Ja Morant wasn't a viable NBA player. The Detroit Pistons didn't know how to have victories in their life. And the Minnesota Timberwolves weren't afraid of the New York Knicks the last time we spoke, but all of that has changed since we have last spoken on this here podcast. Hello, Joel.
I mean, one of those things has changed. One of those things is different. We'll throw that out to Ja, I guess, but one victory does not change things for Detroit. And yet I just went out yesterday and bought Pistons tickets. I'm going to subject myself to misery yet again this season for a second time.
Well, you don't have to root for Detroit, right? Like it doesn't.
No, I'm seeing that. Yeah. I'm seeing them when Minnesota comes in, and one of the benefits of having such a terrible, terrible team in my now home state is that tickets are cheap. So you take advantage of that whenever you can.
As long as you can, absolutely. I remember, like, obviously my team is the team from New York, and they don't get down south very often. And I mean, my south, like Atlanta, Memphis, kind of south. Like Miami's not south, so that doesn't count. Orlando's not really south, so that doesn't really count. I remember one of the times I got a chance to go see them play in Atlanta, and I was blessed. Just a short 4-hour drive, just to go sit in the upper decks and watch Carmelo do his damage as he was turning 400. I think it was the weekend after he was turning 400. So it's good times. Joel, there's some stuff that's happening. I want to talk about a lot of it while we can. We jam so much stuff in. Maybe we don't get too deep into the weeds on some of this stuff, just so we get a little caught up. But I do want to mention a couple of things that are newsworthy up front. One of those being, did you see the news that the Orlando Magic now have, for the first time ever, retired a jersey? And guess who it is? That's right. It's Paolo Banchero already. They are getting that jersey ready for... No, they're going
I was sure it would be Bo Outlaw. I was sure it would be him.
Bo Outlaw deserves it. Let's not sleep on Bo Outlaw now. But no, they're going to retire the Shaquille O'Neal jersey, and that's completely deserving, of course. I did not know that they had not retired a single jersey ever in that franchise's history. Not that it's goes back to the 50s or anything, but it feels like just about everybody's retired somebody's. But Orlando's finally doing it, and Orlando's had finally gotten warmed up, and Shaq is warmed up with the owners to get the very first jersey. I guess it makes sense that it's Shaq, right? Like there wouldn't really be another surefire, right? Like guy that you would pick.
Penny Hardaway would be the other one. I mean, Penny was there for longer, technically, and had an illustrious.
But there's going to be a first.
Yeah.
It probably should. That's the franchise guy, like that. When you think of Orlando, early Orlando, like I think you think of Shaq, and then obviously he made a bunch of money and highlights and a huge chunk of his career outside of Orlando. But when he came onto the scene, he changed the game starting in Orlando.
He did, and he put that franchise on the map quite literally. He's only there for 4 seasons. That's where it gets a little bit murky. Like,
yeah.
You're kind of retiring the jersey not only for his contributions in Orlando, and a big part of that is he gets them to the NBA Finals. I think in his second season.
I think it was like a year. Yeah.
So it's that contribution of a young franchise, somebody coming in at that exact moment, making them part of the NBA's rising zeitgeist in the early 90s, where the NBA was cool and there was no team or few teams, maybe the Charlotte Hornets, that were cooler than the Orlando Magic. And a lot of that had to do with Shaq. But you're also rewarding him and the recognition that, yes, he went on to have a unbelievable Hall of Fame career in the entirety of his career in multiple stops. And yes, that includes with the Los Angeles Lakers, who he defected to. And Orlando has, there's been a lot of hurt with that for a long time of the way that it went down. You can see this magic moment, the documentary on that on ESPN. But I think also the fact that it got repeated then by Dwight Howard, history repeated itself some 25 years later or whatever it was, that made it the Shaq situation almost even worse in a way. So it's interesting that I don't want to say everybody's gotten over it, but they're able to step back and say, in the big scheme of things, the Orlando Magic wouldn't be where they are today without Shaq in that moment and what he did in those first 4 years.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for guys that if you wanted to sort of, and I'm not saying you have to make it a class of people, you can sort of slowly do this because it's not like Orlando's dripping with dudes to come out there, but when you talk about the guys that should be sort of, if they're Hardaway's obviously one of those guys. Anthony Hardaway is one of those. Dwight Howard is one of those that eventually would be, because he obviously was there like 7, 8, and maybe 9 years before he left, and he got them to a finals too, didn't he? Wasn't Orlando in the NBA finals?
Orlando did go, yeah.
Kobe in LA, I think.
Yep.
Was that against Shaq? That wasn't against Shaq. Was it against Shaq?
No.
I'm trying to
no, because I think that it's the Kobe Gasol.
It was Gasol, right? Okay,
grouping, because they beat the Celtics once, lost to the Celtics once, I believe, and then beat the Magic.
Yeah, I was going through before we started this podcast, going through the guys that you might think would deserve some of that recognition, guys that were there for a long time, and the list of dudes that were there for a long time, we're saying like Pat plus 6 years, 7 years, something like that, is not very deep. And then you have to think of what the contribution is. We're talking guys like Jameer Nelson, maybe could be one of those guys, but like, was he really that much of an influential player, or was he just good enough to play for the Magic for 10 years kind of thing? You know what I mean?
Tracy McGrady wasn't there long enough.
Tracy
there's not a lot of others.
How long was McGrady there? I had him earlier up here. I forget. Maybe he wasn't there, which you would consider long enough. But then I don't know. It's 4 years long enough. But again, I think the thing with Shaq, he's worthy of being considered, obviously, because he was drafted there, because he put that franchise, like you said, on the map, and he was such a great player for so long. I mean, he was. He's talked about how, like you said, he was going to stay in Orlando. He was going to stay in Orlando and sign a whole bunch of money until last minute. Jerry West was like, "Hey, I can get you close to what you want money wise," and he was like, "I'll follow the cash." So, it's not like he had, as far as I could tell, hard feelings about that. He wanted a whole bunch of money that people weren't giving out at that time.
That was part of it. If you dig into the documentary, there was a few other things going on, but a lot of it came down to it was a business decision for Shaq.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like it's Orlando is good for Disney, and it's good for him to make. What was that? What was the discussion that I've seen him interviewed for? He was going to get like 100 million, but wanted 150. If I'm not mistaken, and then the Lakers came in with like 120 or 130 or something like that. No, I think Orlando was going to give him like 90, like 80 or 90, and then he wanted 150, and the Lakers were like, "I can't get you 150, but I can get you like 120 or something," and that's what it ended up being. So, I thought that was interesting and noteworthy. I got to look see if there's anybody else that hasn't retired a jersey. It had to be like, I don't know, the Thunder or something, right? Yeah.
Minnesota has still not retired Kevin Garnett's jersey, which is.
But they've retired jerseys though, right?
They've retired Malik Sealy, who passed away while he was a Timberwolf in a car accident. But that's the only one? That's the only player jersey that's hanging in the rafters in Minnesota.
I don't think any of that. Look at that, learning stuff. Something else I wanted to talk about before we got into some of more the meat of the matter. I did want to bring up, because they've cooled down since, but it's clear when you watch them, having Ja Morant back is a thing that the Memphis Grizzlies are okay with. I think they had won like 5 straight games when he came back, including that big comeback against New Orleans. Now they cooled off since then, but having Ja Morant back, and if his head's on right, it's great for the league. It's great for the Grizzlies, and who knows at this point? I gotta look at the standings, see if they are in any See, they are only. Hey, look at this. They are only 5.5 games back out of the last play-in spot with a scant 50 games left. So, yeah, there's time. There's time. But what does this Memphis Grizzlies team look differently to you like when they have themselves a Ja Morant on the floor?
Well, it's not just Ja coming back at this time, although that's the big one. We'll get to that in a second. But also Xavier Tillman is back. Luke Kennard is back. Marcus Smart is back. They all kind of came back during this little stretch. They're still waiting on Derrick Rose. So it's more NBA-ready players. They were having to bump up a lot of their young guys into the starting lineup. They were putting up okay numbers, but were overmatched and the team wasn't getting wins. Now you can set everybody back into, I think, more comfortable roles, more comfortable minute allocations. But it really does begin and end with Ja Morant because he is the lone Grizzly who can not only get his own shot, but can be a catalyst to break down a defense off the dribble. And because he is such a threat at the rim, but also, getting better from downtown, that it pulls the defense towards him. They're paying attention to him. They're not able to double up every time that Desmond Bane runs off a screen or Jaren Jackson gets the ball in the mid post, which is what was happening previously. Those guys who are not really used to facing double teams, they were used to playing off of that. Instead, we're having the wall built against them, and they did their best, but it kind of showed, again, that Jackson and Bane are second wheels at best, probably third wheels, ideally offensively.
Into you disrespecting the good name of Desmond Bane.
I think when you put those two together and you have a Ja Morant, you get a 2A and a 2B, but by themselves, they don't create their own shots. They can get some points, but it becomes inefficient, especially for Jaren Jackson. So much focus then offensively that it takes off all of the elite things he does defensively. So this team was built in a very specific way because you had a singular superstar. It's a place that does not, they're not going to get other superstars walking in that door in free agency. So they built everything around Ja Morant. And when you take him out of the picture, you see the immense strengths and weaknesses of that plan, of how it's perfectly set up around him. And without him, it really does fall apart, despite the best efforts of the guys that were there. Still a good coaching staff, still some talent on the roster. So do I think they're going to challenge for a play-in spot? Yes, I think they're going to challenge. Is it potentially too late? It really might be, because the teams that are ahead of them, there's a few, and I think we'll get to one or two of these that are struggling right now. But everybody who's up in the top 10 spots in the West, legitimately, it feels like belongs there. And I don't see a lot of reasons for why they wouldn't remain there over the long term of the season. So Memphis is going to have a really steep climb. And if they miss the play-in, if they miss the playoffs, all fingers get pointed at Ja. I mean, you have to accept this as the superstar for the team they built around you, and you did not put the team first with your actions, and the team literally suffered a lost season because of it.
I know this team was thin for the first quarter of the season, and Ja Morant was a big reason for that. But like you said, Marcus Smart is hurt, blah, blah, blah. Desmond Bane is the top 20 scorer in the NBA, leading with 24.5 points per game. Since Ja's been back, he's already averaging more than him, 25.5 points per game. You can't substitute for the dude that can just make the plays and make the buckets when you need them. And you see him making them against everybody. He had that really impressive dunk against Victor Wembanyama that turned into a highlight reel thing. Like there's no substituting not only a really good player, but a dude that's literally chomping at the bit because he is so great physically, to be able to come back and prove his worth, as well as just be one of the best 2, 3, 4 players in the NBA at not only his position, but in the entire league.
Desmond Bane is to Ja Morant what Chris Middleton is to Giannis Antetokounmpo, a perfect shot maker for those guys and a release valve when the defense collapses down. But you take away that pressure and that gravity, and everything changes. They are overmatched because they're a shot maker, not a shot creator. Somebody still has to stir that drink for them.
I want to talk now, if you don't mind, about some teams that are sucking. That's the Los Angeles Lakers of Los Angeles. They have lost 3 in a row, 8 of their last 10. They are what you would call it not great. They're the team that's 5.5 up on Memphis for that last play-in spot at this point.
Mhm.
Again, we've seen the Lakers from one of the play-in spots get in and make their way in the tournament and make their way into themselves a near championship run. But let me ask you this. Sorry, I wanted to ask one more in there. The Golden State Warriors as well.
Mhm.
Especially since Nikola Jokic is out there just chucking up Hail Marys to beat him. Oh, did you see his quote after the game? He was asked,
He
"Hey,
knew it was going in, and his coach said he knew it was going in, and all of his teammates said they knew it was going in."
He was asked, "Did you know that was going? Did you call glass? Did you call glass when you threw that up there?" And he goes, "My friend, it went in, and I'm happy." It's like, all right, yeah, okay, but Golden State, another one of those teams that's struggling. Man, it is hard to watch. It's hard to watch Clay. Man, Clay seems like a guy that knows. He's a guy that is going. Okay, so when Clay spoke last, did you? I know I may be sort of mixing the two, but we're going to get to both of them. I promise.
Yeah, let's talk Warriors first. Let's go
talk
Warriors first while we're on them.
Okay. When you saw Clay speak last, did you get the impression that he knew it was over? Not that he wasn't going to go out there and keep trying and he was going to retire or anything, but it felt to me that he's a little resigned to this is who I am. I don't think I'm going to be that special splash brother anymore. This is just injuries have got me, so on and so forth. I'm trying really hard when I'm out there. I'm diminished. It's taking its toll on me. Did you feel any of that? Because I did when I was listening to him. It was one of those few press conferences or few moments where you're like, oh yeah, this guy kind of feels like he sees what we're seeing. He sees that he sees that we see a diminished player too.
I certainly do see it. It's not just that he's moving a lot stiffer and more straight up and down, and he's slower. He doesn't seem to have that pop in his legs. He still has great form, but he doesn't have that pop in his legs. That's probably directly a case of the injury, but I look at him, and I was watching Andrew Wiggins last night too, who has fallen so far from where he was just a couple seasons ago. Last year, Wiggins missed nearly, I think, a third, maybe almost half the season for personal reasons. And whatever was going on, we don't know, and I don't want to play armchair, psychiatrist, but I don't know that whatever it is, he's out of the woods, because he does not look mentally invested in the game. He's floating out there too. Both of those guys look like they haven't been in the weight room in a long time. Who am I to talk? But as far as NBA players go, they both look soft. They do not look in shape. They don't look toned the way they were just a couple seasons ago. Again, with Clay, that may be a source of the injuries. With Wiggins, it may be whatever else has been going on or was going on. Wiggins was their lead defender, and on some nights he was their best player, especially when they were dealing with those injuries. But he was a key cog, a third wheel offensively, maybe even second wheel on certain nights. Clay was the second wheel on nearly every night. So those two guys are, Clay is starter level, Andrew Wiggins is rotation level. They've fallen that far. You have one of your key defenders and your offensive hub in Draymond Green, who can't get out of his own way and can't put the team first for anything, apparently. And it's putting it all on Steph. They've got some talented pieces still there, young guys who are, again, being overcast a little bit. But it's kind of like we talked about with Memphis. Golden State was built to play a specific way. And yes, we can say it starts and ends with Steph, but that's not really true. Steph's brilliance shines even more when he's got all of these other shot makers and he's got the defensive help around him. And now you're asking younger players, you're asking role players, like a Kevon Looney, like a Dario Saric, like a Chris Paul at this point. I know he's a Hall of Famer, but Chris Paul is a role player. That's what he is at this stage of his career. Brandon Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis are rookies who both have proven they can play. Jonathan Kuminga can play. Moses Moody, they're still figuring out. But you're asking all of them to do too much because the apple cart has been upset in Golden State with the injuries, with whatever's been happening to Andrew Wiggins. And it does right now. It looks like it's over unless any of those three guys, including Draymond Green, are able to recapture what it is that they've been missing this season and really through a lot of last season too. If they can't recapture that, Golden State, they're going to stay right where they are, around 500, maybe a little bit better. They'll be dangerous on some nights. They could make a run, but they're not going to go as far as the more talented teams above them, especially the ones that now are talented and finding cohesiveness that Golden State is still trying to figure out. But it starts and ends with Clay and Andrew Wiggins and Draymond.
Yeah, and Clay's points per game are down this year. He's down like 5 or 6 points. I think he's down to like 15 points a game.
And his shooting percentage is what's really damaging.
Yeah, that's the next thing I was about to add on to that. His shooting percentage is down 4 or 5 points from three, which is that. I mean, that's his guy. That's his thing, right? Like that's once you start getting sharp drop offs as a sharp shooter, when that's your specialty, essentially, that's the reason you've been able to be so special, right? Like, he has good games. He still has really good games. He had a good one last night. He had like 25 or 26 points last night, and he shot 50% from three.
After airballing his first three and looking real shaky for the first couple of minutes, but yeah, he got it together.
Yeah, but that's also after coming off a stretch where he had like 5 straight games where he had 13 or less or something like that. But he had like a 5-game stretch where he had 22 or more before that. Like he can in bunches grab you something short term. Like no one's saying they should be in the NBA. It's just as far as the way this. Go ahead, Joel.
Well, I was going to say offensively, part of the issue though too is you think back, Clay used to be their lead defender along with Harrison Barnes, and they brought in Andrew Wiggins so it didn't have to be Clay anymore post-injury. But now it's gotten to the point where Golden State is having to build a defense to hide both Steph and Clay defensively. You can't hide both of your guards, even if they're competing and even if Steph has quick hands and gets a lot of steals, and loves to gamble, all this stuff. You can't hide both of them, especially when you don't have Andrew Wiggins walking through that door to erase all those mistakes, and Draymond isn't even in the building.
There are only 4 teams that allow more points per game in the West than Golden State. It's San Antonio, Utah, Dallas, and Sacramento. And now, granted, Golden State does try to put up numbers in bunches too. But when you look at the teams that are worse defensively than based on just points per game, there's differences in that. There's one, bad teams are in there. Also, there's super young teams in there too, with guys that are on the come, so to speak. That it's not because they're not necessarily great defensively; it's that their style doesn't allow for great defensive numbers to show up night in and night out. And I'm speaking specifically of Sacramento. So, I'm not surprised, right? Like I was talking about this going into last year.
You've been calling this for a lot longer than I have, for sure.
This team isn't as good. They're old, comparatively speaking.
They're last in their division right now. Last in the division.
That division is not supposed to be a great division.
Oh, well, no. You got Phoenix, you got the Clippers, you got the Kings.
Well, the Clippers were garbage to start this year. And they were not good last year. Granted, I was also
Lakers.
Relying on no one ever getting healthy again.
Playoff teams.
Well, I also what was it? It was 2 years ago that the Clippers were like actually good, right? Like the good where we thought they would be deep into the playoffs. Last year, murdered by injuries, and the end of the year before.
Yeah, but now they're sitting 4th in the West. Well, they've put on their run.
I don't mean as of now. I mean like the division wasn't supposed to be good in my eyes coming into it. That was supposed to be where Golden State's last in the division, I should say, coming into the year. I thought the Clippers would still struggle, but the Clippers also made a big trade. So like it's not as if like they didn't improve their stock anyway. And that trade's worked out for them really, really nicely so far. James Harden is happy now. We can talk about that in a minute. As long as he's happy for the next 3 or 4 months, which is what he likes to run that nice 4 or 5, maybe 6 month nice run on you. As long as they're doing well. But yeah, this is a team that I didn't think would be very good. I still thought play-in worthy, but yeah, we're comfortably on the back end of that dynasty that they had, and
How frustrated must Chris Paul be thinking that he was going ring chasing and might finally get one to be loaded with this team,
I
and
don't
you get there the wrong year?
I don't see. I don't know. Like Chris Paul's no dummy, right? Like he's not a dumb guy. So if we can see this, and I'm just some hick from Alabama, like if I
Mhm.
can see that, guys are breaking down. Steph's is still elite. He's still a really great player, but the pieces around them that they've tried to sort of patchwork with Clay since his injury, and we're going on what year? So year 4 now of him trying to be healthy-ish to where he could be consistent with you. And Draymond's just been he's an old dinosaur in this league. Like he just doesn't play the way modern basketball plays. He's an old bruiser essentially at this point. This team is trying to patchwork the Wigginses of the world and the Loonies of the world to try to make this thing work, and it's you know it's not good. Who was it? Who was it that got punched in the face by
Jordan Poole.
Poole? Yeah, Jordan Poole. That guy should still be on this team, right? That not after the punching, right? That there should not have been a punching to start off with. But if
Right.
Jordan Poole's on this team, I think Golden State's better. I think Golden State's comfortably in the 5 or 6 right now.
I disagree. I disagree wholeheartedly.
You didn't think
because their problem isn't scoring points, and that's all Jordan Poole could do was score points, and it wasn't entirely efficiently. They need defensive help. They need athletes who can get above the rim, block some shots, and guard people, and they're in short supply on that, and that's why somebody like Brandon Pajimski and Trace Jackson Davis are playing as rookies for this team, is because they haven't been terrible defensively. They've had young legs and energy, and both of those guys have shown some athleticism on the offensive end that this team is it's sorely lacking. And Jordan Poole, I don't think would have provided that. Plus, I mean, Poole's been exposed in Washington. There again, you don't have a lot of help, but I think for the money, the dollar amount that they had handed him, they realized that he had probably plateaued already and is a good scorer, an NBA level scorer, but that's really all he brings to the table.
Let's talk about another team in the West that struggled, that includes a couple of losses recently to someone's Timberwolves. I can't tell you who, but it's someone that's not me is a fan of them. It's the Los Angeles Lakers. They are not great right now. As I mentioned, they've lost 8 of 10, which is what I like to call not great. And Joel, struggling is an understatement. They've lost 4 of 5, including the Heat, the Pelicans. Oh, look, the Timberwolves. But they did beat the Hornets, and God bless them for beating the Hornets, right? Like no one just goes and beats the Charlotte Hornets anymore. That's what I respect about this Lakers team. But I'll be honest with you. I think. Okay, so you brought this up that you wanted to talk about it, and I think teams go through lulls and stretches during the season, and I think this is one of those. But are you worried more that this is indicative of something that might be deeper when it comes to more important and meaningful basketball when it comes later in the season? I shouldn't even say later in the season. They've got to start figuring some stuff out because this West could run up and leave them.
Yeah, and that ties back into the point about the Warriors, where you're in a Pacific Division where you're supposed to have 5 playoff teams, but the Phoenix Suns are struggling. They've had injuries. They haven't been able to get their group together. They've had chemistry issues. The Lakers are now struggling, and Golden State can't take advantage of that, while the Clippers went on a run, took advantage of it. The Kings have been sitting, near the top the entire time. I'm less worried about the Lakers, to answer your question, because yes, lulls happen, and this is a team that's just coming off of winning the NBA Cup, whatever that means, but it was playoff atmosphere.
It was a cup.
It was playoff atmosphere type basketball and single elimination, and they showed up. They showed us what they can do. They were relatively healthy, but not whole. And I do think there's been a little bit of a hangover coming off of that. You've seen it with the Indiana Pacers as well, who made it to the Cup finals and then really struggled afterwards. I think there was a lot of energy expended in that pursuit, and then you get done with that and you're back into the regular season, the doldrums of late December, early January, which is the toughest part of the NBA year. So this doesn't entirely surprise me, but if there are points to worry about, I think it's that they have not figured out their guard rotation at all. They were really hoping at the beginning of the season that out of respect for D'Angelo Russell, they would keep him in the starting lineup and he was going to be in a timeshare with Gabe Vincent. Russell being a gunner who can run a nice pick and roll from time to time, but is incredibly streaky. And then the always steady Gabe Vincent, who is just a shot maker and a guy who is a glue guy, a connector offensively. You would have had an option for each. Russell has been as streaky as ever, as inefficient as ever, and Vincent has been hurt. I think Vincent's played like 3 games for them this year. And they may not get Gabe Vincent back this year. So now all of a sudden, you are running a point guardless lineup when D'Angelo Russell is not in there. You're asking LeBron to bring the ball down to initiate Austin Reeves to do that. That's fine. Both of those guys can do some of that, but ideally you would want to be able to have somebody that you can trust handling the basketball to initiate. I'm worried about that guard rotation because Cam Reddish is playing as a starter. They're singing his praises. He's become their lead defender. I still am watching a guy who, and I got to look at for Reddish. It feels like he's been around forever. And I know he came in with not a lot of experience. It was somebody that, played 1 year of college. He's 24 years old. They figured he was going to learn on the job. I don't see a guy who has figured out what he is offensively at all. And this is, year 6 for him? 5? This is the point where I think it's year 5. This is the point where he's got to start to string something together. You're starting on a team that's supposed to be championship contender. They move Austin Reeves out of the starting lineup to the bench, now back to the starting lineup. They have not figured it out. Rui Hachimura has been in and out of the lineup hurt. Christian Wood is suddenly unplayable as far as Darvin Ham is concerned. Jackson Hayes has been hurt, and he was the guy that was supposed to take Wood's spot as the backup center. So there's just a lot of things that you would hope you would figure out in the first 20 games, and now we're nearing game 40 in a week or two, and you haven't figured those things out. That's where the concern comes up. It was clear that team was just not athletic enough. They weren't on the same page. They needed big trades. The answer is not to make trades at the deadline here and reshuffle the chemistry apple cart all over the place, all over again, because you don't even know exactly what you have and how people fit. Some of that is injuries. Some of that is inconsistency of guys. And then, like you said, some of it too is just a natural lull in the schedule. And I think we'll see them lock in a little bit more. Does it downgrade my prediction about them winning the NBA championship? Yes, absolutely. I'm not as confident in that anymore as I was. And it's the last few weeks as a body of evidence. Are they still going to be in the hunt for it? I believe so. I think they'll be back in the hunt.
I kind of with you on Cam Reddish. I was bullish on him before, just in general, but you're right. It's year 5. I'm not sure what's up. And like I said, again, I'm just some hick from Alabama. I don't know. I just sort of pretend like I know what I'm watching on this podcast, and then go here and tell you how great the Knicks are. That's what I do. That's all I do. And the Lakers, I don't worry yet about the Lakers. The Lakers don't have an easy schedule upcoming over the next few games, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, like, they're a little above 500 against the West, and like they're 4-7 against the East. Luckily for the rest of January, they only have like 2 or 3 games against the East. They have like 10 against the West. So, maybe there's something to get these out. Some of those East games are like against Toronto and stuff, mm-hmm. like a team that's, essentially they've thrown in the towel, so to speak. So I'm not ready to worry about the Lakers yet. I am on high alert to start the readiness, mm-hmm. because this doesn't just feel like it's a pure lull, which sometimes happens. But if we get into another like week or two, like if it's mid-January and there's, they win like 2 of their next like 6 or 7 games, I'm gonna start to worry a little bit, because the Lakers schedule upcoming Let's see. They got Memphis, the Clippers, Toronto, Phoenix, Utah, and OKC for the next 2 weeks, and then you can add Dallas to that if you want.
This is how we felt about them at that point last year too. And the one, you look at the Lakers and you say they have a defined 1 and 2 superstars. Anthony Davis is 1, LeBron is 2. You've got a third wheel who's credible. That's Austin Reeves at this point. You have good role players that fulfill different types of roles. You've got a couple of defenders in Jared Vanderbilt and Taurean Prince, and now Cam Reddish. They're still trying to figure out whether D'Angelo Russell fits on this team or not. He could be a guy who is moved at the deadline, though I don't know what you're going to get for him at this point. And like I said, they're still trying to figure out Rui Hachimura, Christian Wood, Jackson Hayes, that front line, how that fits together. But the pieces are there. They're already there in-house, and it's figuring out how that fits together. That's different than other teams like the Warriors, where you go, it's not just I don't know what we have, it's that I think we might not even have it. Like, it may just not be on the roster anymore.
Yeah, I'm the reason I'm not as worried about them is because you predicted them to win it all to start the year. And I understood it. I understood it because I'm with you. When you talked about possibly making a move at the deadline, in back of my head, I'm like, I don't know why. Like, I don't, unless something just isn't clicking totality-wise. But everything is there for them to get through a rough stretch.
Maybe at the point guard
like they started the year. Huh?
Maybe at the point guard spot, if Gabe Vincent isn't going to come back this year and you're kind of sick of the D'Angelo Russell experiment, maybe you try to bring somebody in. But LeBron James has played
I mean, would you be?
I would be getting close. I would be getting close because he, for such an irrational confidence guy, doesn't seem to actually be playing with a lot of confidence right now. I think he knows the leash is short. And so when you're not making shots and you're not contributing in a lot of other ways and your team badly needs it at that position, he is kind of the weak link right now. And it would look a lot different, again, if you had Gabe Vincent to go, all right, D'Lo doesn't have it tonight. He's playing 12 minutes and Gabe's going to play 30, or Gabe's going to play 24 and we'll let LeBron run the point for a handful of minutes. We'll give Austin Reeves a couple of possessions that way too. We're going to be fine. And then on the nights that Russell is clicking, he's the guy who's going to get 28, 30 minutes. They don't have that luxury right now. And they don't have that insulation from the ebbs and flows in D'Angelo Russell's game. And that's where you could see him getting unloaded for a far lesser player, but somebody who can just come in and fill that role, fill that spot. I don't have a short list of guys who that could be yet at this point, but you could see something like that if they were to make a move. I wouldn't really touch anywhere else on the rotation. I think the wings and the front line are set, but you got to figure out how they fit together, and that's going to require guys to stay healthy and stay in the lineup. Jared Vanderbilt missed a ton of time, and Hachimura has been in and out all over the place. So has Hayes.
All right, let's finally get to an important team, the New York Knicks.
Yes, thank you. Please, I really want to hear your thoughts on the trade, especially now that you've gotten to see OG Anunoby for and Precious Achiuwa for a couple of games.
Oh, is that who they are? Okay, I didn't notice anything. Listen, the Knicks obviously make a big deal. This is a trade. This was a player they were looking to nab last year, and Toronto wanted a little bit too much, and I don't think they were really ready to quite blow things up. But then, Fred VanVleet leaves, and all of a sudden, Pascal Siakam, you're starting to see the dismantling now completely of what Toronto was, and going to see what Toronto starts to become later on. Toronto, as on this podcast, they're an afterthought. No one ever talks about them. They shouldn't. It's over now. Goodbye. But now to a relevant team, the New York Knicks, who grab him. They do have to give up a guy I did not love giving up, especially in Immanuel Quickley. By the way, did you see the fact that on Christmas, the Knicks won on Christmas, right? And he tweeted, "A win on Christmas, God is good," or something like that. And then within 2 days, he had gotten traded, and he was like, "Oh my!" The next tweet was like, "Oh my, what was that?" So, okay, first let's just talk about the getting Anunoby and Achiuwa. I can't keep getting used to that. I've heard it like in one game like 9 times, and it's still tough for me. Precious Achiuwa. I think
And Malachi Flynn, although we'll see if he even gets into Tom Thibodeau's rotation or not, which I kind of doubt.
Suck eggs for all I care. He's not the guy. The two guys clearly were Anunoby and Precious Achiuwa. I'm gonna start saying slow like that. It makes more sense to me. Here's what's happened in the 2 games since. Knicks are unstoppable. Unstoppable. They come in and they beat this Minnesota team that's fresh into the league, and they beat Chicago by 16. Now they got Philadelphia. They're on the road to Philadelphia tonight. That'll be obviously the first real test. Minnesota was nothing. Neither was Chicago. But I'll tell you, since then, Julius Randle's gone loose. 74 points in the 2 games since. Not bad when you're opening up a little bit of room for him. I'll say this. I like this trade. And I texted you about it when we were talking about it. I like this trade. I don't love it just because I have a heart on for Immanuel Quickley, a heart. But I've been wrong. I had a heart on for Kevin Knox too. And I was wrong about him. But I don't think I'm wrong about Immanuel Quickley. I think wherever he finally gets to be the shining star somewhere, I think he's going to be really, really special.
He's in the starting lineup immediately in Toronto and finally gets that chance to showcase himself, which in New York, it was clear that he was going to be the backup the rest of the way and was probably going to leave for a starting position as he hits free agency. So
listen, and I get it. And I get that for him. He wanted more money in the offseason, this last offseason, and then he was going to be, putting the Knicks up for more money and probably try to get a start coming into next year. There's just not room for him to be the starter on this roster. So the Knicks get a lot of value for him going. They got a team who was basically desperate to sell in Toronto to still also get something good back from him in Immanuel Quickley. But I will say this. I like him because Anunoby, that is, he does as well as what you were going to find what Tom Thibodeau likes to do. Right. I think for this team who was middling, and they were middling. I told you before we finished last podcast, I've been disappointed with the team is. They've been sort of riding the 500 train all year. This is a shot in the arm for the team because they are good enough to be a top 4 seed.
I believe it too. Yeah.
They were good enough before they made this trade. They get a bona fide starter in Anunoby. They get a bona fide help in their big man situation with Precious Achiuwa since Mitchell Robinson's done for the year. That's the 2 things that the Knicks needed if they were going to. Now, the injury for Mitchell Robinson forced one of their hands, but not the Anunoby hand, right? So you're able to get a couple of pieces with it. He plays really great defense, which is a Tom Thibodeau staple. He can score. He is someone other teams have to pay attention to, and they have to make sure bodies are on him. He's too big, he's too long, he's too strong, and he's too good of a shooter to be able to ignore him. You put him on the same court with Jalen Brunson, who has been going nuts, and Julius Randle, who has been going nutser from the poor man's MVP from a couple of years ago. This team becomes formidable again, to where they were. They've already gained like a spot in the standings in 2 games. All right, Joel C. Cordes, they're already up to like the number 8 seed. Okay. And this team can still battle and still be a top 4 seed. More importantly, be dangerous when the playoffs come. This is what that's setting up. I don't know if Tom Thibodeau ever cares about the regular season anymore. Like, I don't even think he cares if he has home court advantage. I mean, he had a home court advantage a couple years ago, and Trae Young stole it from him, right? Like, and granted, this team's better than that team. But I think Anunoby and Precious Achiuwa are huge additions for this team based on how Tom Thibodeau likes to play his teams, and also because of the position of need that they needed. And by the way, what's his name that they got off the scrap heap 30 minutes ago because of the injury? Like, he wasn't going to be the guy. Like,
Taj Gibson.
Taj Gibson wasn't going to be the long-term guy. He couldn't be. the long-term guy. Did you see the video of him basically like being in for like 3 minutes and then running down the court calling for a substitute? Like he was calling for like someone to bring him out. He's like, "I'm out. Someone come get me. Come get me." Again, he's old. He's old, and he just can't. He wasn't playing full court basketball before Tom Thibodeau was like, "Hey Taj, you want to come back, hang out? Want to run it back?" No, that wasn't going to be it. So I think this makes the Knicks team a lot better. This is one of those tough situations where if you want to get better and you want to get a good player, you're going to have to give up a good player. And Immanuel Quickley is what was that for me. We had talked a bunch of times on and off this podcast about how much I like Immanuel Quickley, and you like Immanuel Quickley a lot too. It's sad, but he was in the last year of a contract. He probably wasn't going to come back to the Knicks anyway. So
for me, it's fit because we've talked about Quickley a lot, but let's talk about RJ Barrett for a second here too. Number 2 pick. He is the better athlete than Anunoby. He might be the more talented player overall than Anunoby. But what did this Knicks team need? They needed another lead defender, and Barrett is not that. He's a solid defender, a rugged defender, but not a lead guy every night. Anunoby is a lead guy defensively who can guard 1 through 5. He's one of the few NBA players, and in that way, he really reminds me of, I made the comparison to Luol Deng as soon as the trade got made, but he really reminds me.
OG is Tibbs' new Luol Deng. Just watch.
Yeah. But he really reminds me body style and play style wise of Ron Artest of Meta World Peace. He is a big, rugged forward who technically slots in at small forward, but can give you good defensive minutes at all 5 positions. And sometimes within the same possession, he winds up guarding 3-4 different positions too. Anunoby is not a guy that you run plays for offensively. Yeah. You saw it during that Minnesota game. He locked down Anthony Edwards. Yes, Edwards got 35 points, but it was inefficient. And Anunoby was all over the court defensively. He scored on backdoor cuts and knocking down corner threes. That's exactly what New York needs, is a guy who will reliably make those baskets, allowing Jalen Brunson to play in the paint, Julius Randle to play from the high post and in the paint, and to be able to kick out. Barrett was a guy that, unfortunately, either because of his pedigree, having been a number 2 pick and always a lead guy previously, or it could just possibly be his youth and trying to figure things out. If you were not running plays for him actively, keeping him involved, he just kind of disappeared a lot, didn't he? Almost like young Andrew Wiggins style, where he just would begin to float a little bit because he wasn't involved. And Anunoby is used to that. He's involved at all times. He just doesn't get plays run for him.
Yeah, I don't think the RJ Barrett analysis is off that very much for you. I think he's a guy that if he feels like he's a part of the game plan, if he feels like there's something for him, he's a huge spark. He's great. He can be great in times and the flashes. You've seen it all over the place. But, Tom Thibodeau has got like 2 dudes right now that he's focused on, before this trade happened, right? He has Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson.
Which is the right move, by the way, at this point in those 2 guys' careers. Right move.
100%. And yeah, if you're Barrett, you probably feel like you got a number 2 pick on me. I sit here and I perform pretty well. My numbers look pretty good. I mean, since the trade, he's got like 33 points. So he's had a couple pretty good games since. But
he's going to get a great look in Toronto, right? To be kind of the lead guy with Siakam. He's going to get a great look in with Quickley. This is a nice opportunity for both those guys with the Raptors.
It is. And I like Barrett. I like Quickley. I like Quickley more than I like Barrett, to be honest with you. But I could see why there's people thinking that there's a future with RJ Barrett. I think it's just more now with Tom Thibodeau. I'll just say it that way. I don't think with the way Tom Thibodeau plays, I don't think that's the best fit for RJ if you want to get the best out of RJ.
You're right. You dull some of the edges with him. You dull some of the edges and what he does in that particular lineup, whereas Anunoby is a nearly perfect fit.
Yeah, I think. I don't think you have. I'm not saying he would go to this team. I'm not what I'm saying, but I'm saying if he's on a Nick Nurse team, RJ Barrett probably see better RJ Barrett than what you see. I think if he was, if he was, shoot, I think if he was in Houston, like if he was with Ime Udoka, I think you'd probably see better RJ Barrett than what you sort of saw with New York consistently, than what you would see out of New York. So I'm gonna miss both those guys, Immanuel Quickley more, but I do think the team is much better off that this was the trade. This trade came out of nowhere, by the way. I don't know if you saw it. Like it was Saturday, and like I think you texted me first about it. It's like you're like, what do you think about the trade? And I was like, I'm sorry. So I had to look. I was like, oh, dude, I didn't even know that was the thing that was happening. What, like it came out like on Saturday or something last Saturday. We're almost a week since it's happened, and like I had heard nothing about that since last year. I mean, there were some whispers last year that was happening, but I didn't know Toronto was ready to sort of dismantle him. I thought last year they were either going to get rid of him or Siakam or something like that, but they held pat. So I didn't know. I wasn't expecting it.
I got to ask you before we move on. You look at the Knicks rotation now, and things make a lot of sense. You basically have a timeshare at the shooting guard spot with DiVincenzo and Quentin Grimes. Totally fine with that. OG Anunoby and Josh Hart are going to play a lot of minutes together. Anunoby will slot to the power forward when that happens. Randall kind of has the power forward spot locked down, and when he rests, it'll be Anunoby, and Hart will get more minutes now. And Shea was just going to be the backup to Hartenstein, and they're going to give Isaiah Hartenstein as many minutes as he can handle. The one question becomes backup point guard spot, where Immanuel Quickley was absolutely overqualified at this point to be Jalen Brunson's backup, because Brunson is a high-minute player. He plays for Tom Thibodeau, for crying out loud, and deserves to be on the court. So you don't have a ton of backup point guard minutes to go around, and Quickley was showing that, yes, he is a starter caliber, at least a top 6 type of player in a rotation in this league. Are you fine with the fact that, like, now it's Miles McBride and maybe Malachi Flynn? They're going to figure out that backup spot, and yeah, you don't have to worry about finding Quickley minutes anymore, especially because him and Brunson really, like, they could play together, but that wasn't ideal. Are you fine with the fact that, like, maybe the allocation makes sense, but you definitely are less talented with McBride and Malachi Flynn, though they both are more traditional type of point guards?
Yeah, very, very much more traditional. I think McBride's great. For that backup position, right? He plays a handful of minutes a game. What I like about him is that he is really efficient with the ball. Like he is, his assist to turnover ratio is just stupid, right? It's like
I see some Gabe Vincent, analogies there, or like even Jordan McLaughlin in Minnesota.
Yeah. He's exactly, I think, what Tom Thibodeau wants. And since would it be what I want? Yeah, I don't know, maybe. But if what I want for the best potential Tom Thibodeau situation to work out, yeah, he's safe with the ball. He doesn't turn it over. He finds the right guy the most of the time. And again, you're talking about a guy they'll play like 8 or 9 minutes a game, maybe, right? So you're not having to sort of use him long stretches constantly. If you had some foul trouble, would I be a little more issue oriented with them? I don't know. I haven't really seen that much, to sort of know that whether or not I would be scared if he was in foul trouble. But I mean, Brunson's got to sit down at some point, right? Like he can't play 48 every night.
Theoretically.
Well, if there's a guy that's going to try, it's Tom Thibodeau. So, listen, Tom Thibodeau will let someone like Derrick Rose play 40 in the game if he'll have it. So yeah, I don't have a huge problem with it. I don't have actually a problem with it at all. I think I could be comfortable with it. You're going to have a step down when you come to the bench anyway. Like I think as far as it's just about, if you get to the bench, do you have a spark there, or someone that doesn't, turn that plus minus into a super big minus, and I think Miles McBride's okay there. I think he's been really safe with the ball, and that's really, to me, what matters.
Do you see, and you've gotten to watch Quickley and RJ Barrett a lot more than me, and then we can move on. And I think Toronto does get kind of a shot in the arm with this move too. Do you see both of those guys, either of those guys, long-term in Toronto's future?
No. I think Quickley it wants to go test the market. I think Quickley wants to be somewhere, and I think he will get a big contract somewhere.
Somebody like Utah, like Brooklyn, like Washington,
I
all are
think
going to need
Brooklyn,
point guard
even
help.
though I would
Maybe
never speak
Chicago too.
I think Brooklyn, even though I thought I'd never have to talk about that name again, Brooklyn is a great spot for him to be able to go to. Chicago's not bad, but again, I'm not sure where they're going to be with their coach after this year. Like, I don't know if I think he could fit well with Billy Donovan, but is Billy Donovan the guy that's going to be the coach next year?
Right.
I don't. If I am any franchise that is, let's say, lower end to start to compete to try to get back in there, if I'm looking for a relatively
Detroit. Detroit.
Listen, Cade Cunningham needs help, right? Apparently, like that bench is awful, man. Like there's just, I'm not saying Quickley will be on the bench, but you start bringing some guys back.
Jaden Ivey's not ready.
They need help, man, in a long way. You're gonna have to pay over 20 a year to get him. He's going to command a pretty hefty price, but he's on his rookie deal now, right? Which is great for Thibodeau and the Knicks to be able to control that money for as long as you can. But yeah, I don't think Toronto. I don't think either one of them is going to be in Toronto. I think RJ has a better chance of being in Toronto than I think.
Because he's from Canada, and they may make that. Especially if they're gonna go through a lull. That's typically when you bring the hometown guys in to give your fans somebody to root for.
Look, he's from right down the way. I don't know where in Canada RJ's from, but
I think he's from Toronto, but I could be wrong.
Toronto?
I think so.
That works. All right. Got anything else you want to get out of here on? You want to mention before we get out of here? We're right up on the hour mark.
Just thoughts on Wemby and Giannis last night going at it. So much fun.
How about Wemby still being tall, huh? Like, the dude's crazy. You know, it's funny. I do like the Wemby coverage because it really is all about, like, can you believe he did it? The dude's crazy, right? He's taking like 2 steps from the free throw line and dunking it. You know, like he's doing
the stuff to be saying about Giannis.
Right,
we say that about Giannis when he started.
He's going behind the back in traffic, doing a 2-hand flush with a ball feels like it's all in the air. This is in that game, by the way, we're talking about. With Giannis last night. And at the end of the game, Giannis is like, I'm gonna try to dap him up, and Wemby's like, nope, I'm just gonna lankily walk out of here. Like,
Giannis posterized Wemby a couple of times, but Wemby also got that huge block in the last 30 seconds where he just snuffed Giannis at the rim.
It can't be the great rivalry like Milwaukee, Indiana's turning into, right? Because they just don't play each other nearly enough.
Right.
But you see those two teams on the schedule, like, the NBA's got to know what's up and put those on prime time every single time. At least make it an option, because you got prime time players and a prime time team to be able to put up against them. And again, the NBA is all about showcasing the great players out there. And that was a good game. That was a good game too.
San Antonio got up for it, right? They're on national TV, and they got up for that. And
San Antonio sucks, man. Like, I saw this. Let me ask you about this, and then we'll get out of here. Speaking of San Antonio, it was I can't think of his name. It's the color commentator on TV, I think, for San Antonio.
Sean Elliott, probably.
Is he the TV guy?
Yeah, I think that's Sean Elliott.
Think he's okay, because I couldn't remember if he was TV or radio, and I didn't want to attribute it to the wrong guy. So, there was a game, I think it was last week, where, because San Antonio's awful right now, right? They're not good. And we didn't think they were going to be very good, but I
thought they'd be way better than this. I thought they'd be sitting in 11th, 12th, maybe.
Yeah, but like, it's not like you thought they were in 5th or 6th.
No. But about 10 more wins than they have right now.
He said that it looked like that the players around Wembanyama aren't realizing who he is. That the team is Wembanyama's team right now, no matter how much they may not want it. And they were showing clips of like how he was wide open underneath for, like, he was cutting for dunks, that he was wide open. It's not like you can miss a 7-foot guy, 5-foot guy streaking into the lane kind of thing. It's almost as if they were trying to say, hey, rookie, so to speak, this is not your team yet. Even though he said he thought clearly this is his team because they're building around Victor Wembanyama. Is that something when you do see San Antonio? And I know you probably don't watch a lot of Spurs basketball.
No, I actually have watched quite a bit of them.
Have you really watched? Okay, because I haven't watched a ton of it. I've seen a bunch of highlights, but not the games. Does it feel like that's the case? That there are more moments than there should be that Wembanyama isn't the focus by the other team? Or by the other guys on the team?
I see Devin Vassell as clearly his running mate going forward. Keldon Johnson is up in the air. They've moved Johnson to the bench right now as the third scorer. That may be a good spot for him. I think Keldon Johnson can start in this league at small forward. I think all of those guys can work. Everybody's just so young, and over the last couple of seasons, they've had other young players like DeJounte Murray, like Derek White, that they've cycled through trying to figure out who they have as a star. And Devin Vassell kind of rose to the heat. Keldon Johnson really kind of came out of nowhere for them to be a scorer. But both of those guys are learning a lot defensively. They are not good on that end. And San Antonio has guys who are good defenders and cannot score to save their life. And they've got guys who can score who cannot defend to save their life. It's young guys really trying to work it out. I'm surprised that they haven't won 10 more games. Wemby doesn't play quite as many minutes as you would think. Some of that's because of the ankle injury. Some of that is because he was playing the full off season. So they're trying to load manage him a little bit. So it's a rougher start than you would guess, but I think the initial couple of building blocks are there. It's now trying to figure out the role players more than like, oh, well, the other young stars don't like Wemby. I don't see that out of.
Well, and I think he was trying to make the point that not the young guys on the team are, but the older veterans are not being as deferential as they should be, especially when
that could be. There's only they only have a few veterans. It's Jetty Osman and Nick. Zach Collins is there, although now he's been hurt again and is out of the lineup. And Mr. Basketball from Creighton. Their shooter. Name is escaping me. Like Doug McDermott.
McDermott's still in the league?
Yeah, McDermott's been on the Spurs, although he's been in and out of the lineup because he's been hurt. But yeah, he's gotten some minutes there.
Doug McDermott's still in the league?
Doug McDermott is absolutely still in the league, and I can confirm
I have seen him.
Yeah, he's sitting on the Spurs roster.
What year roster are you looking at?
I have seen him play this year.
Have you seen him on the court?
Yes. Yeah, I've seen him knock down a couple of threes running dragon screens.
I type in Doug McDermott's first headline. Spurs Doug McDermott won't play Thursday.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's only 32. He's only 32.
Yeah, but it feels like he's been washed out of the league for 4 or 5 years.
That may be true, but
let me look at his bio. Let's get his. Okay, I thought. Yeah, I remember. I don't even remember him in Dallas. Like I remember the really great year in New York, but I do not remember him going to Dallas and then Indiana and saying, "Man, there's a lot of years I missed Doug McDermott." Wow, that all right, fair enough to me.
The more you know.
There you
go. We all learned something valuable today on Basketball by Association that Doug McDermott is, yes, indeed, still an NBA.
Doug McDermott, 31 games played this year.
Mm-hmm. We started talking about Wemby and Giannis.
Averaging 15 minutes a game.
Mm-hmm.
He is averaging his fewest amount of points per game since his rookie year, though.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm not sure.
When I thought he went away, he was averaging double-digit points. Where is this guy been?
I'm not sure that out of that group of veterans that you've got somebody trying to ice out Wembanyama. I think it probably is more like, hey, Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson and Jeremy Sohan all got to be looking for him more, and they've got to figure out their point guard spot. They thought Malachi Branham was going to be a starter. They thought Trey Jones was going to be a starter. Both of those guys, it's really iffy whether they are rotation level players at all. They've got a lot to figure out in San Antonio, more than they thought they would, but Wembanyama is as good as advertised. The only thing that's stealing some thunder away from him is Chet Holmgren is really, really good with the Thunder, who we didn't even talk about today, but I want to talk about them next week. And then the fact that Wembanyama is not playing quite as many minutes as anticipated, but otherwise, so far so good with the Spurs.
3 years ago, Doug McDermott had his greatest season that he's had as an NBA player. I'm not sure what you said. Okay, before we go out, you get to guess career earnings for Doug McDermott, who's been in the NBA since 2014. 3 seasons with Chicago, 1 with OKC, and then
45 million.
Dude, I wish you were right.
It's way higher than that, isn't it?
$73 million.
Wow, I was gonna say 55, and I was like, that feels high.
Yeah, NBA.
Hey, you get paid to shoot threes. You get paid to shoot threes.
Mamas, put your kids on the perimeter and let them shank it up from an early age. All right, that's going to do it for us. This is the Doug McDermott episode, as far as I'm concerned.
Be that as it may. Yep. We'll try to do this again next week. We'll attempt to.
Goodbye, friends.